They told me never to rent the 6th room of that old boarding house, but I didn't believe in ghost stories. That night, at exactly midnight, I heard 3 sharp knocks from behind a wall that was supposed to be solid brick, and then the whisper, a voice, cold and broken, begging me to let it out. I should have run. I should have never listened, because what came through that wall wasn't human anymore. Daniel couldn't sleep. The whisper still echoed inside his ears like a splinter burrowing deeper into his mind. He sat upright on the creaking bed, staring at the cracked wallpaper of room 5. Right across from the infamous room 6, the lamp on the bedside table flickered, casting long, twisted shadows that writhed along the walls as if alive. The landlady's warning repeated in his head, never answer it, no matter how much it begs. Her voice had trembled, her eyes hollow with fear. But fear of what? Daniel had never believed in ghost stories, not until tonight. The knocks came again, 3 of them. Slow, deliberate, knock, knock, knock. Daniel held his breath. His pulse thundered in his ears. Then, silence, broken by a faint scratching, like fingernails dragging across wood. The sound came not only from room 6, but also from the wall beside his own bed. He pressed his ear to it, heart hammering, and heard the whisper again. Please, I'm trapped. Let me out. The voice was cold, hollow, and inhuman, yet strangely desperate, almost childlike. His stomach twisted with unease. Logic screamed at him to leave, but curiosity rooted him in place. What could be inside that wall? The scratching grew louder. The plaster bulged slightly, dust trickling down. Daniel stumbled back, horrified. Then, with sudden silence, everything stopped. Trying to calm himself, he convinced his trembling hands to switch off the lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. He lay back down, forcing himself to breathe evenly. Perhaps it was just the house settling, old pipes, or a trick of his imagination. But at exactly 3:07 a.m., Daniel woke to something far worse. The wall opposite his bed was moving slowly, breathing, rising and falling as though it had lungs of its own. A rotten smell seeped out, thick and suffocating, like decayed meat left in the sun. He sat frozen as a faint shape began to form, a handprint pressing from the inside of the wall, pushing outward, stretching the wallpaper. Fingers splayed wide, clawing desperately. Daniel scrambled to the door, but the knob wouldn't turn. Locked. Panic rose in his throat. He pounded against it, shouting for the landlady, but no sound left his lips. His voice was gone, stolen by the suffocating silence that filled the room. Behind him the wall cracked open. Plaster rained down. A pale, skeletal hand reached out, nails blackened and broken. It grasped the bedpost and pulled itself further through. A face followed, a face that should have never belonged to anything human. Hollow eyes, mouth stretched far too wide, skin torn as if it had been buried alive for centuries. You opened the wrong side, it whispered. Daniel collapsed to the floor, paralyzed with terror. The creature dragged itself halfway into the room, its limbs twitching unnaturally, head jerking at impossible angles. Then, suddenly, it stopped. Its head snapped toward the locked door as if sensing someone on the other side. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. The landlady stood there holding a rusted lantern, her face pale with dread. "It found you," she whispered. "God forgive me." The creature hissed and lunged. Daniel stumbled backward, his legs giving out as the creature clawed further through the wall. Its body moved like wet fabric being dragged across nails, bones cracking with each unnatural twitch. The smell grew unbearable, rotting earth, rusted iron, and something older. Something wrong. The landlady raised her lantern high, the trembling flame casting long shadows across the grotesque figure. For a split second, Daniel thought the light pushed it back. The creature hissed, its skin blistering where the glow touched. "Stay still," the landlady barked, her voice shaking. "Do not move. Do not look directly into its eyes." Daniel, half crawling, half dragging himself across the floor, pressed against the farthest corner of the room. His chest burned with silent screams he could not release. The wall behind him felt damp, alive, pulsing like muscle. The creature shrieked. Its voice was not one but many layered screams of men, women, and children, echoing from the crack in the wall. Daniel clutched his ears, but the sound was inside his skull, vibrating through his bones. The landlady pulled something from her apron, a small glass vial filled with black liquid. With trembling hands, she smashed it against the wall. Smoke rose instantly, filling the room with a bitter stench of burned herbs. The creature recoiled, half retreating back into the darkness it had crawled from, but before it vanished completely, its hollow eyes locked onto Daniel, its mouth stretched impossibly wide, tearing at the edges, blood dripping from split flesh. "You opened the wrong side. We are not done with you." With that, it slipped back into the crack, and the wall sealed shut as if nothing had ever happened. Only the foul stench remained. Daniel gasped, his voice finally returning in broken sobs. What was that?" The landlady's face crumpled with shame. She lowered the lantern, her shoulders heavy. "You should never have come here," she whispered. "Room 6 was sealed for a reason. It is a mouthboy, a doorway, and you fed it." Daniel shook his head violently. "I didn't open anything. I didn't. You listened." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "And once you hear it, it will never stop calling." She stepped toward him, placing a frail but firm hand on his shoulder. "Leave this place before dawn. If you stay another night, you won't leave at all." But leaving wasn't so simple. The next morning, Daniel packed in a frenzy, refusing to look at the walls as he stuffed clothes into his bag. Yet when he rushed down the narrow staircase, suitcase in hand, the front door wouldn't budge. The handle turned, the wood groaned, but it refused to open. The windows were the same, sealed tight as though the house itself had no intention of letting him go. The landlady sat silently in the parlor, her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the dusty floorboards. "I told you," she murmured. "It has you now. Then help me." Daniel shouted, "Call the police, an exorcist, someone." She shook her head slowly. "The police came once. So did priests. None left." Daniel's blood ran cold. That night, the knocking returned. But this time, it wasn't coming from room 6. It was coming from inside his own room. The next morning, sunlight barely touched the edges of the window. I sat on the creaky bed, staring at the brick wall where the knocking had come from. It looked perfectly normal, dusty, cracked in a few places, but solid. Yet the memory of that whisper lingered in my ears like a curse. I pressed my palm against the wall. Cold, too cold, as if something inside was draining the warmth. Then I felt it, a faint pulse. The wall was breathing. I yanked my hand back, heart slamming against my ribs. I knew I had to leave, but something stronger than fear pulled me closer. Curiosity, or maybe the wall itself. That night, at midnight, it happened again. 3 sharp knocks. I froze, clutching the bedsheet, waiting for the whisper. Instead, the brick dust fell loose onto the floor. One brick, just one, shifted slightly, as though someone on the other side had pushed it forward. I couldn't breathe. Slowly, carefully, I bent down. The gap was small, but enough to see a flicker of movement. A pale eye stared back at me. Not human, not alive. And then, the whisper returned, clearer this time. "Let me out." I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the bedframe. My lungs refused to take in air. The eye was still there, unblinking, locked on me through the gap in the wall. I wanted to scream, but my throat tightened until not a sound came out. My hand reached for the doorknob, then froze. The door wouldn't move, no matter how hard I pulled, twisted, or slammed my shoulder into it. The old wooden door stayed shut, as if something stronger than nails held it in place. Behind me, the whisper grew. "Cold, so cold, let me out." My skin prickled. Every instinct screamed to run, but I was trapped. The eye blinked once, and in that instant, the temperature in the room dropped. My breath fogged the air. The flickering lamp bulb above me buzzed violently before it died, leaving me in darkness. Then came the sound. Not just one knock, dozens, hundreds all around me. The walls, the floor, even the ceiling thudded as if countless fists were hammering from inside. The room shook with it, dust falling from the rafters. I pressed against the wall furthest from the eye, shaking, whispering prayers I'd long forgotten, and then silence for a heartbeat. I thought it was over, until the voice spoke again, directly inside my head. "You already opened the door. You just don't know it yet." My head throbbed as if the words had been carved into my skull. "You already opened the door." I pressed my palms against my ears, but the whisper didn't fade. It wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was inside me. The eye had vanished. The brick looked solid again, as if nothing had ever shifted. But I knew better. I could still feel that cold pulse seeping through the wall, like a second heartbeat echoing against mine. I forced myself to lie down, clutching the blanket like it could shield me from whatever lived behind that wall. Sleep didn't come easy, but when it did, it was worse than staying awake. In my dream, I was standing in the same room, only the bricks were gone. Instead, there was a hallway, narrow and endless, lined with doors on both sides. Each door had deep scratches, as though something had clawed at them from the inside. One door at the far end slowly opened. Darkness spilled out like ink, and from within that darkness, the whisper rose again, louder, hungrier, closer. "Come closer. You brought the key." I jolted awake, drenched in sweat. My heart hammered, but I wasn't in bed anymore. My bare feet pressed against cold stone. My hands brushed wooden frames. I was standing in the hallway from my dream. Somewhere behind me, a door slammed shut. The air was damp, colder than ice, and it stank of mold and old wood. My breath echoed too loudly, as if I had stepped into the hollow chest of something that was never meant to be alive. The hallway stretched in both directions, impossibly long, lined with doors. Each one was different, some wooden, some iron, one even padded with torn leather. The strangest part was the scratching. I could hear it faintly from almost every door. Long, dragging scratches, as though nails or claws were carving the inside. I froze. My mind screamed, "Wake up," but my body knew this wasn't a dream. My bare feet pressed against the damp stone floor. It was real. A whisper slithered along the walls. "Closer, you brought the key." My hands trembled. "What key?" I whispered back before I could stop myself. The whisper chuckled. A dry, broken sound. "You already carry it. In your chest." In your fear, the scratching grew louder. One door rattled violently, the hinges creaking, as if something behind it wanted out. I staggered back, pressing against the opposite wall. But the hallway didn't offer safety. It felt alive, pulsing, as though the stone itself breathed. I forced myself to move forward, step by step. Each door I passed radiated a different kind of cold. Behind one, I swore I heard a child crying. Behind another, the sound of water dripping endlessly. Though the air was bone dry, I stopped at a door with deep fresh gouges. The wood was splintered, the lock bent outward. Whatever lived inside had been pushing out. And then bang! The door bulged as something slammed against it from inside. I stumbled back, but my eyes stayed glued to the wood. Another slam. This time the lock snapped. A crack formed down the middle of the door, and a sliver of black mist leaked out, curling along the floor like smoke. My body screamed to run, but my legs betrayed me. They carried me closer. My hand rose, reaching for the crack. My fingers trembled, brushing the mist. It was colder than death. Then came the eye, the same pale, inhuman eye I'd seen behind the brick wall earlier. It peered through the gap in the door, blinking slowly. "We are waiting," it whispered, not from its mouth, but directly inside my skull. The door split further, wood cracking like bones. The eye was joined by another, then another, too many, a cluster of pale, lidless eyes peering at me through the darkness. I staggered back, my chest heaving. My feet splashed into something wet. I looked down. The floor beneath me was slick with blood. It dripped from the ceiling in fat, lazy drops falling across my shoulders, streaking down my arms. I gagged, wiping at my skin, but the blood only spread more, soaking me thick and warm. The scratching stopped. Every door was silent now, and in that silence, all the whispers spoke together. Hundreds of voices, overlapping, echoing. "The hallway is open. The walls remember. You can't leave until one of us does." My vision blurred. My legs shook violently. I pressed my back to the cold stone and slid down to the floor, shivering, soaked in crimson. And then I heard footsteps, not from behind me, not ahead but above. Something was walking along the ceiling. The footsteps were slow, deliberate. Each one echoed through the hall as if the stone itself amplified it. Tap, tap, tap. I tilted my head back, my neck stiff, and there it was. A figure clung to the ceiling, limbs bent at impossible angles, like a spider that had been broken and pieced back together wrong. Its skin was stretched thin, gray and sickly, clinging to sharp bones that jutted out like knives. And its head was turned completely upside down. The thing grinned at me, mouth wide, teeth jagged and red. My heart tried to claw out of my chest. I pressed harder against the wall, blood dripping down my face from the ceiling, but there was no escape. The hallway stretched endlessly in both directions, every door sealed, every shadow hungry. The creature moved, not a scuttle, not a crawl. It slid. Its limbs didn't move like they should, and yet it glided across the ceiling toward me, face twisted in a permanent grin. The whispers began again, but they weren't coming from the walls anymore. They came from its mouth. "Closer. You carried a key. Closer." I screamed finally, the sound tearing from my throat after hours of silence. My voice echoed down the endless hallway, but no help came. Nothing answered except the creature. It dropped in an instant. It was no longer above me but crouched on the floor, just inches away. Its head tilted, bones cracking as it steadied me. The stench that rolled off it was unbearable, like rotting meat soaked in stagnant water. I scrambled backward, slipping in the blood. My palms slapped the floor, smearing red as I pushed myself away. The creature didn't chase. Not yet. It only followed with its eyes, grinning, whispering, "You opened the first door. Now you must choose the second." I stopped. My back slammed into one of the hallway doors. My trembling hand brushed the handle, and to my horror, it was warm, burning. Almost. The door pulsed beneath my touch like a heartbeat. I shook my head, tears streaming down my cheeks. "No, I'm not opening anything." The creature leaned closer, its grin widening until the skin at the corners of its mouth tore. A wet sound filled the hall as its jaw cracked lower than humanly possible. "You already did," it hissed, and pointed one long crooked finger at my chest. I looked down. There was blood seeping through my shirt, but it wasn't mine. The fabric bulged slightly, as if something inside me was pressing against my skin, trying to push out. "No!" I gasped. My shaking hands clawed at my shirt, pulling the fabric away. But the bulge moved. It slithered across my chest like something alive beneath the flesh. The creature's whisper grew deafening. "The key is inside you. Open the door." Suddenly, the door at my back flung open on its own. A violent suction yanked at me, pulling my body toward the darkness inside. My fingers scraped the stone floor, nails tearing as I fought it, but the force was relentless. The creature didn't resist. It simply stepped back, tilting its head like it was watching a game. I screamed as the blackness swallowed me whole, and then I was gone. The fall had no end. I tumbled through darkness, my body weightless, my scream swallowed before it could leave my throat. The blackness wasn't empty, it was thick, pressing against my skin, seeping into my lungs. It felt like falling through ink. Then impact. I hit the ground hard. The breath ripped from me. My vision spun, and when it settled, I realized I wasn't in the hallway anymore. I was in a room, but not a room like before. This one stretched infinitely in every direction. yet I could still see the walls, if they could even be called walls. They pulsed, alive, like the inside of a throat. The floor squelched beneath me, warm and slick with some fluid I dared not name. The stench of iron and rot filled my nostrils until bile burned my throat. I staggered to my feet, trembling, and that's when I noticed them. Doors, hundreds of them, suspended in midair, scattered across the endless expanse, some upright, some sideways, some upside down. Each one whispered. Faint voices leaked out, pleading, sobbing, screaming. The whispers merged into one dreadful chorus. Choose. I spun, dizzy. My eyes landed on a door closest to me. Unlike the others, it wasn't floating. It stood right in front of me, its surface covered in carvings, symbols I couldn't recognize, twisting and writhing as though alive. My hand lifted without my permission. Something inside me pulled like a magnet hand. My palm pressed against the wood. The carvings burned into my skin, white hot. I yanked my hand back, but the mark stayed, glowing faintly on my palm. Behind me, a sound rose. Drip. I turned. From the fleshy ceiling above, blood dripped steadily into a pool, but with each drop, the pool grew not just in size but in depth, like it was becoming a doorway itself. And then something crawled out, pale fingers first, stretching far too long, jointed in the wrong places. Then arms, then a torso that bent backward unnaturally. A figure emerged, dragging itself up from the pool of blood like it had been waiting there forever. It had no face, only a smooth stretch of skin where eyes and mouth should have been, but it breathed. I could hear it, wet labored gasps echoing in the chamber. My legs locked. I couldn't move. The faceless thing tilted its head at me, and though it had no mouth, the whispers filled the room louder than ever. You carry the door inside you. You cannot run from it. Open. My chest seared with pain. The bulge beneath my skin writhed violently now, pressing harder, shifting upward toward my throat. I clawed at my chest, desperate to rip it out, but the thing inside me pushed back. The faceless creature lurched forward on twisted limbs, its steps splashing in the blood, the whispers vibrating the walls. I staggered backward, colliding with another floating door. This one snapped open on impact, revealing a black void filled with eyes, dozens, hundreds, all staring at me. And then I understood. Every door led to something worse. Every choice was a trap, and I was running out of doors to resist. The faceless creature lunged, its body bent like liquid, each joint bending backward with sickening cracks. I stumbled away, slipping on the blood-soaked floor, my hand brushing against another door floating low to the ground. It swung open instantly. Screams burst from within, thousands of voices shrieking in unison. A rush of wind blasted outward, nearly knocking me flat. Inside was a staircase spiraling downward into nothing, the steps made of human bones. Faces were carved into each step, mouths open in endless agony. Their eyes rolled, watching me, pleading silently as if begging me not to descend. The pull from my chest dragged me toward it. The bulge beneath my skin writhed violently, pressing higher, forcing its way up toward my throat. My vision blurred. Blood filled my mouth, though I had no wound. The whispers roared. The key is ready. The door must open. The faceless figure dropped onto all fours and crawled at me, impossibly fast, splashing blood in every direction. Its smooth head split down the middle, revealing not a mouth, but another door, small, wooden, glowing faintly, as though carved from my own nightmares. It wanted me to open it. No, I croaked, pressing my back against the bone staircase door. I won't. But my body betrayed me. My chest convulsed, and with a wet, tearing sound, something pushed through. Flesh split. Agony exploded through me. I looked down in horror as a key, black, jagged, dripping blood slid out from between my ribs. It hung suspended in the air, pulsing, vibrating with every beat of my heart. The whispers turned into screams of delight. Yes, the key is born. The door is ours. The faceless creature froze, then slowly extended one trembling hand. It wanted the key, but so did the doors. Every door around me rattled violently, their locks snapping, their hinges shrieking. One by one, they cracked open just enough for pale arms, eyes, and teeth to push through. Hundreds of things clawed at the edges, desperate to escape, desperate for the key. The air itself tore apart with their hunger. I clutched my bleeding chest, stumbling backward toward the staircase door. My mind screamed at me to throw the key into the void, but my arm moved on its own, lifting it high. The faceless creature screeched, a sound so piercing it split my eardrum. It lipped, its dormouth opening wide. And then impact darkness swallowed everything as the key slid into a lock. I didn't know which door I had chosen. I only knew one thing. I had opened it, and whatever lay behind, that was coming through. The silence after the lock turned was worse than the whispers. For a heartbeat, the entire realm froze. The faceless creature knelt before me, its limbs twisted in reverence, its dormouth hanging open, trembling as though it too feared what was about to arrive. The floating door stopped rattling. The whispers died, and then I heard it, a single breath. It wasn't like human breathing. It was deeper, heavier, like the exhale of something the size of a cathedral. The air quaked. My knees buckled under its weight. The blood-soaked floor rippled like water, and the space before me split open. It wasn't a doorway this time, it was a wound in reality itself. From it poured black smoke, thick and choking, smelling of ash and burning flesh, and within the smoke, movement. Something stepped forward, at first only a shadow, towering, skeletal, wings folded tight against its body like torn sails. Its head brushed against the fleshy ceiling, though the room was endless. The creature ducked low, joints cracking like trees breaking in a storm, and its form bled into existence. It had no clear shape, its body shifted, melted and reformed. One moment it looked humanoid, the next it stretched into something insect-like, then serpent, then something that had too many limbs to count. Eyes opened and closed across its body in waves, rolling toward me, each one locking on, studying me. The faceless creature fell prostrate, smearing its hands into the blood as if in worship, but the towering thing ignored it. It looked at me, or rather, it looked through me. The black key I had pulled from my chest hovered still, glowing faintly. The entity extended one hand, or what resembled a hand, its claws long enough to scrape the floor even from that height. When it spoke, the entire realm trembled. "You opened my prison." The voice wasn't a whisper. It wasn't sound at all. It was thought forced into my skull, vibrating my bones until I thought they would shatter. My voice was barely a croak. "I didn't mean you carried the key. You carried it always. You were chosen." The words crushed me with their weight. My spine bowed. Blood seeped from my ears, nose, and eyes. My vision blurred. Red around us. The doors burst wide. One by one, their horrors spilled into the realm. Creatures of every size and shape. Things with too many legs, things without faces, things that screamed with voices like sirens. And all of them knelt. Not to me. To the thing I had freed. Its shifting form leaned closer, its 1,000 eyes blinking in unison. "You are mine," it said. And before I could protest, before I could even scream, one of its claws pressed against my chest wound. The pain was unbearable, like fire poured into my veins. The bulge inside me writhed violently. And then snapped. The thing inside me, the seed of the key, shattered open. My body arched backward as something vast and ancient surged through my veins. My skin burned, cracking like porcelain. My vision flooded with eyes, with symbols, with screaming faces. I was no longer just me. I was a doorway, and the world beyond was stepping through. The silence after the storm was unbearable. Every creak of the old boarding house felt louder than thunder. Every shadow seemed to shift and crawl along the walls. I sat in the hallway, drenched in sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. The lantern beside me flickered, sputtered, and died, leaving only the faint moonlight through the cracked windows. I knew I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not while the 6th room was still waiting. The air grew heavy, colder than before, like an invisible hand tightening around my throat. Then it came. 3 sharp knocks. The same ones I had heard that first night. The same ones that started everything. Only now, they weren't coming from the wall. They came from right behind me. I froze. My skin crawled as the whisper slid into my ear. Trembling, broken, but familiar now. "You let me out once. Let me in again." I turned slowly, every nerve screaming not to. And there it was, the figure no longer bound to the bricks, no longer half hidden in shadows. It was whole now, or at least pretending to be. A pale, twisted version of a man. Its face stretched with something between a smile and a scream. Its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the moonlight, like 2 wet stones dredged up from a grave. I stumbled back, pressing my hands against the floorboards, whispering prayers I didn't even believe in. The figure tilted its head, studying me like a predator studying prey. "Do you know why they warned you about the 6th room?" It hissed, voice cracking like broken glass. I shook my head, but deep down I already knew. It leaned closer, and for the first time I saw the truth in its form. The shadows clinging to its skin weren't just darkness. They were hands. Dozens of them, clawing, dragging, pulling at it. Faces writhed beneath its flesh, their mouths opening in silent screams, because once the wall is opened, the house doesn't keep just one of us. The floorboards beneath me groaned. The walls trembled. From the cracks in the plaster, more whispers poured out, hundreds of them, overlapping in a chorus of despair. The hallway darkened as figures began to step through the walls, through the ceiling, through the very air itself. Men, women, children, all twisted, all broken, all hungry. My mind screamed for escape, but my body wouldn't move. Then the first one lunged. I don't remember if I screamed, if I prayed, or if I finally gave in. All I remember was the last sound I heard before the world went black. 3 sharp knocks. Only this time, they were from inside my chest. Weeks later, the old boarding house stood quiet again, its shutters banging softly in the autumn wind. The townsfolk still avoided walking past it after sunset. They said the place was cursed, that anyone who dared rent the 6th room would vanish without a trace. But people forget quickly, and landlords are greedy. The sign went up again. Room for rent, cheap, no questions asked. A young traveler arrived one evening, suitcase in hand. He was tired, broke, and desperate for a place to stay. The innkeeper handed him the key without looking him in the eye. Room 6. The traveler climbed the creaking stairs, whistling to himself, unaware of the warnings that had once been whispered about this place. The room smelled faintly of damp stone and old wood. He set down his bag, stretched, and laughed at his own good luck. Then, just before midnight, as he settled into bed, the sound came, 3 sharp knocks. He frowned, tapping the wall. Solid brick. Must have been his imagination. He turned over, pulling the blanket closer. That's when he heard it. The whisper, "Let me out." The traveler sat up, heart racing, his breath fogging in the icy air. The voice grew clearer, closer. "Please, let me out." And from somewhere deep within the wall, faint but undeniable, came the sound of scratching like fingernails clawing their way toward freedom. That the traveler swallowed hard, forcing a nervous laugh. Old houses make strange noises, he told himself. But when he turned off the lamp, the darkness answered him back. "Thank you for moving in. I was getting lonely." The traveler's name was Daniel Hayes. He wasn't a believer in curses, ghosts, or any of the small-town superstitions that made locals avoid places like this. He was practical, logical. All he needed was a cheap bed while he looked for steady work. Room 6 gave him exactly that, or so he thought. The first night, the knocks had unsettled him, sure, but exhaustion dulled his fear. He convinced himself it was the pipes, or rats, or some trick of the old house groaning against the night wind. He even laughed at himself for imagining whispers. He had grown up in the city. He didn't scare easily, but the second night, it got worse. At exactly midnight, the knocks came again. Not 3 this time, but 6, slow, deliberate, each one echoing through the room like a nail driven into his skull. The sound didn't just come from the wall. It came from inside his head. Daniel sat upright, clutching the blanket, sweat dripping down his temples. "Who's there?" he demanded, his voice trembling despite his effort to sound calm. The room answered with silence, and then, the whisper, "You opened the door for me once. Now let me in again." Daniel scrambled to the lamp and lit it, flooding the room with weak yellow light. His eyes darted to the brick wall, solid, cold, motionless. He stepped closer, pressing his ear against it. Nothing. Relief rushed through him, shaky and short. He turned away only to freeze when his breath fogged in the air. The room temperature had dropped suddenly, unnaturally. Behind him, the brick wall groaned. When he spun back around, his blood ran cold. The mortar between the bricks was bleeding. Thick, dark liquid seeped down in thin trails, coating the wall in crimson veins. Daniel stumbled backward, his stomach heaving, his rational mind breaking piece by piece. He grabbed his suitcase, ready to bolt out the door when the whisper came again, louder now, deeper. "Don't run. You belong to us now." The lamp flickered violently. The bleeding wall pulsed like a heartbeat, and from the shadows pooling at the floor, pale fingers began to push through. Daniel didn't remember dropping his suitcase. He didn't remember falling to his knees either. All he remembered was the hands, the pale, rotting hands clawing out of the wall, dragging streaks of blood across the brick as they pushed into his world. His scream caught in his throat. He scrambled toward the door, twisting the knob until his palms ached. But it wouldn't turn. It was as if the wood had fused with the frame. The whispers grew louder, not one voice but dozens now. Men, women, children. Some begged, some laughed, some sobbed. They circled him in a chorus of madness. "Stay, stay." Daniel banged on the door with both fists. "Help somebody, help me." No one came. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the whispers stopped. The bleeding wall went still. The fingers retreated into the brick, leaving faint, bloody handprints behind. Silence. Daniel collapsed against the door, shaking. He stayed that way until dawn, when the first light of morning bled through the curtains. Only then did the knob turn freely. He stumbled into the hallway, gasping for air as though he'd been drowning. The house was quiet, dust motes drifting in the sunlight. He half expected the innkeeper to be standing there, laughing at him, telling him it was all a joke. But the hallway was empty. By afternoon, Daniel's rational mind had returned, or at least part of it. He told himself it had been a nightmare. Stress, exhaustion, maybe even food poisoning. Old houses creak, and tired brains imagine things. That's all still. He couldn't ignore the bloody stains that lingered faintly on the bricks when he went back to room 6. No matter how much he scrubbed with a rag and water, they wouldn't come off that evening. He went downstairs to confront the innkeeper. The old man sat at the front desk, polishing a cracked glass lamp. His hands shook with age, his skin wrinkled like crumpled parchment. He didn't look up as Daniel approached. "You knew," Daniel said, his voice low, "about the room, about the knocks." The innkeeper froze, then sighed heavily. His cloudy eyes lifted, meeting Daniel's. "You should have listened," the old man rasped. "They warned you, didn't they? Everyone in town knows not to touch the 6th room." Daniel's fists clenched. "What is it? What's in there?" The old man shook his head. "Not what, who?" He leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "Her name was Eleanor Blackwood, a girl who lived here when this was no boarding house, but her family's manor. She was 16 when she vanished. Her parents said she was sick, bedridden. But the neighbors, they heard things, screams, knocks, night after night, until one day, silence. Daniel swallowed hard, his skin prickling. What happened to her? The innkeeper's eyes darkened. They bricked her into that wall, alive, to keep her from spreading whatever had gotten into her. Some say it was madness, some say it was possession. But when she died, she didn't stay quiet. She never has. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. That thing in the wall, that's her. The old man gave a bitter laugh. Her, and everyone since. Anyone who answers her knock doesn't leave this place. Their souls stay bound to her, feeding her. That's why I never rent the room. But the landlord, he spat on the floor. He doesn't care. He just wants the money. Daniel's stomach turned. His mind flashed to the hands clawing from the wall, the dozens of voices, her and everyone since. The innkeeper grabbed his wrist suddenly, with surprising strength. His grip was ice cold. You've heard her already, haven't you? Then it's too late. She's chosen you. Daniel yanked his arm free, heart pounding. I'm leaving tonight. The old man only shook his head. You can try, but she follows those who open the door. And you've already opened it. That night, Daniel packed everything into his suitcase and left before dark. He didn't care about his deposit, about his job search, about anything except putting as much distance as possible between himself and room 6. But when he checked into a roadside motel 30 miles away, something waited for him. As he slid the key into his new room, the light above the door flickered. Inside, the room smelled faintly of damp stone, and just as the clock struck midnight, 3 sharp knocks from the bathroom wall. Daniel sat frozen on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the bathroom wall. His breath came in ragged bursts, his ears straining for the sound again. 3 knocks. Slow, heavy, deliberate. He gripped the lamp beside him and yanked it from the nightstand, clutching it like a weapon. His heart thudded so violently it hurt. It can't be her. It can't follow me. That old man was just trying to scare me, but deep down he knew better. The knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. He stood, every muscle trembling, and stepped toward the bathroom. His bare feet sank into the cheap carpet, sticky with spilled beer from some long-gone guest. He pushed the door open. Nothing. The cracked mirror reflected his pale, sweat-drenched face. The faucet dripped once, twice, before falling silent. The air was still. Daniel let out a shaky laugh, lowering the lamp. I'm losing it, he muttered. That's all then. The whisper. You opened the door. You can't close it now. Daniel dropped the lamp. The bulb shattered across the tile. He stumbled back, slamming the bathroom door shut. His pulse roared in his ears. He couldn't stay. Not here. Not anywhere. He grabbed his suitcase and bolted into the night. Leaving the motel room wide open behind him, the highway stretched empty under the sickly glow of the moon. Daniel drove 4 hours, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. He didn't care where he was going. He just needed distance. But the whispers followed. They rose with the wind through the half-open window, hissed from the crackling static of the radio, murmured in the engine's hum. You belong to me now. Run farther. It won't matter. Your soul is mine. At one point, exhausted and delirious, Daniel pulled into a gas station. The attendant, a tired-looking man with sunken eyes, gave him a long, knowing stare. You look like hell, the attendant said. Daniel forced a smile. Rough night. The man's gaze lingered, then shifted to Daniel's car. Where'd you come from? Daniel hesitated. Town about 30 miles back. Old boarding house. The attendant's face went pale. He stepped back, shaking his head. No, son, you didn't. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? The man leaned closer, lowering his voice. That place. No one leaves it. Not really. If you've heard the knocks, you're marked. She'll follow you to the end of the earth. Daniel's mouth went dry. You know about her. The man's eyes darted around the empty lot. Everyone around here knows. Eleanor Blackwood, the girl in the wall. They say she feeds on fear, on life itself. Once she's touched you, you can't shake her. Daniel slammed his fist on the counter. There has to be a way. A priest, an exorcist, something. The attendant shook his head. They've tried. All of them. She always wins. That night, Daniel didn't make it far. His exhaustion caught up with him, and he pulled over at a rest stop parking beneath a flickering street lamp. He reclined the seat, forcing himself to close his eyes. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. Then the dream began. He was back in room 6, the bricks pressing in around him. The voices screamed, hundreds of them, clawing at his mind. In the center of the room stood Eleanor. Her skin was white as bone, her black hair matted and crawling with insects. She smiled at him with broken teeth. You can't run, she whispered. You're mine. Her hands shot forward, cold as the grave. Wrapping around his throat. Daniel jolted awake, gasping for breath. The street lamp above him had gone dark. And in the silence of the night, from the trunk of his car came 3 sharp knocks. Daniel sat frozen in the driver's seat, every muscle in his body wound tight. His eyes locked on the rearview mirror, but the glass only reflected the faint outline of the trunk behind him. 3 sharp knocks. His breath caught in his throat. His hand inched toward the keys, ready to start the engine. But his mind screamed, if she's inside, if I drive, what happens when she gets out? The silence stretched. Then, softer than before, came the whisper, "Let me out." Daniel's stomach dropped. The exact words from room 6. The exact cadence. The same voice. "No," he whispered, gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles cracked. "No, you can't be here." Another knock, louder, more urgent. "Let me out." Daniel forced himself to breathe. Slowly, he reached into the glove compartment, pulling out the rusted tire iron he kept for emergencies. His hands shook as he stepped out of the car, the cool night air burning against his skin. The world was too quiet. No crickets, no wind, just the faint hum of the street lamp until it flickered once and died, leaving him in darkness. He circled the car, every step heavy, his eyes darting to the shadows stretching across the pavement. His hand hovered over the trunk latch. "Just rats," he whispered to himself, or a raccoon as trembling fingers found the latch. He pulled. The trunk sprang open. Empty. No bags, no tools, no spare tire, nothing. Just bricks. Stacks of old crumbling bricks, mortared together as though someone had built a wall inside his trunk. Daniel staggered back, bile rising in his throat. His mind spun. Impossible. It's impossible. The bricks shuddered, and from between the cracks, pale fingers pushed through. Daniel screamed, slamming the trunk shut. He fumbled back into the driver's seat, slammed the lock down and twisted the keys. The engine roared to life. Gravel spat under the tires as he sped out of the rest stop, his headlights cutting through the suffocating dark. But no matter how fast he drove, the whispers followed. "You opened the door. You're mine now. You can't run, Daniel." By dawn, he found himself parked on the edge of a small town. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembling. He hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. He stumbled into a library, desperate for answers. The librarian, a frail woman with sharp eyes, gave him a suspicious look when he asked about Eleanor Blackwood. "You shouldn't speak that name here," she whispered, glancing around the empty building. "I don't have a choice," Daniel rasped. "She's following me." The woman's face paled. After a long pause, she disappeared into the back and returned with a dust-covered book. She set it down with trembling hands. "Blackwood family records," she said. "What's left of them?" Daniel flipped through brittle pages until he found an entry dated 1874. Eleanor Blackwood, age 16, confined due to hysteria. Witnesses claimed she spoke in voices not her own. Family sealed her into the east wall of the manor on the 12th of November. Declared dead within 3 days. House abandoned shortly after. Daniel's hands shook. "They murdered her." The librarian leaned close. "Some say they tried to stop her, that she wasn't their daughter anymore, that she was something else." Daniel slammed the book shut. "I don't care what she was. I'm not going to be her next victim." The librarian hesitated. "There may be a way, but it's dangerous." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Tell me." She swallowed hard. "You have to go back to where it began. To room 6, face her, end it." That night, Daniel sat in his car outside the boarding house once more. The windows glowed faintly in the moonlight. The front door stood open, as if waiting. His chest tightened. His instinct screamed to leave, to keep running. But deep down, he knew there was nowhere left to run if he didn't end it here. Eleanor would follow him forever. Daniel tightened his grip on the tire iron, stepped out of the car, and walked toward the house. Behind him, faint but unmistakable, came 3 sharp knocks. From inside the car, Daniel's legs felt like lead as he stepped onto the warped wooden porch of the boarding house. The air itself seemed thicker here, pressing down on him, suffocating. The front door creaked wider on its own, as though the house had been waiting for him. He tightened his grip on the tire iron. "This ends tonight," he whispered. The moment he crossed the threshold, the air chilled. The lanterns in the hallway flared to life without flame, casting sickly green light across the peeling wallpaper. Shadows stretched unnaturally, twitching like living things. The whispers began at once. "Daniel, Daniel, come home, Daniel." He ignored them, forcing himself up the stairs. Each step groaned under his weight, echoing like bones snapping. He reached the landing, his breath ragged, and faced the door. Room 6, the brass number on the wood shimmered faintly, like it was wet. The door pulsed. Once, in time with a heartbeat, he raised the tire iron, hand trembling, and pushed the door open. The room was wrong. The bricks that had once sealed Eleanor in were gone, replaced by a yawning void that seemed to stretch forever. The floor sagged inward, like a mouth waiting to swallow him whole. Cold air rolled out, carrying the stench of rotten damp earth, and in the center of it stood Eleanor. She wasn't the flickering shadow he had seen before. She was whole now, tall, pale, draped in a dress that looked like it had rotted on her body a century ago. Her hair hung in wet, tangled ropes, her eyes glowing faintly white, her lips split into a smile far too wide. "Welcome back," she whispered. Daniel tightened his grip on the iron. "This is over, Eleanor." Her laugh was jagged, broken, echoing from every wall at once. "Over no, Daniel, this is forever." The walls bled, thick black ichor oozing down. The whispers became screams. Pale hands burst from the floor, grabbing at his ankles, his legs, pulling him toward the void. Daniel swung wildly, smashing one of the hands with the iron. It shattered like glass, scattering into ash, but more replaced it. He stumbled forward, every step a battle, until he stood only feet from Eleanor. Her smile widened. "You opened the door," she hissed. "Now you'll never close it." She lunged. Her body moved like smoke, flowing, wrapping around him. Her hands closed on his throat, cold and slick. He gasped, his vision blurring. In her eyes, he saw flashes of faces, screaming, begging, dying, all the souls she had claimed, and his would be next, with the last of his strength. Daniel raised the tire iron and drove it into her chest. For a moment, silence. Then Eleanor screamed, not just from her throat, but from everywhere: the walls, the floor, the air. The entire house shook violently, plaster raining from the ceiling. The void widened, swallowing the floorboards. Daniel pulled the iron free and struck again, and again. Each blow ripped more of her apart, until her form flickered, fractured, dissolved into smoke. The screams grew higher, shriller, then cut off. The void collapsed. The hands vanished. The room went still. Daniel fell to his knees, gasping, the tire iron slipping from his bloody hands. It was over. It had to be over. But as he staggered to his feet, he noticed the wall. The bricks were back whole, fresh mortar between them, and from deep inside, muffled, came 3 sharp knocks, followed by his own voice whispering, "Let me out." Darkness. That was all Daniel knew at first. Darkness so complete it felt solid, pressing against his eyes, his mouth, his lungs. He clawed at the space around him, but the air was thick, suffocating, as though he were buried alive. His fingernails scraped brick. "No," he whispered, his own voice bouncing back at him. "No, no, no." 3 sharp knocks thundered in the silence. Only this time, they came from his own fists, slamming desperately against the cold stone, and then his own voice answered, "Let me out." The words hadn't come from his mouth. They came from everywhere. The walls, the mortar, the space inside his head. He was speaking, but he wasn't. 100 voices rose around him, all trapped in the same black prison. They shrieked, sobbed, laughed, begged. Some whispered promises of escape. Others just screamed endlessly. Daniel pressed his palms to his ears, but it didn't help. The sound came from inside. "We are many," one voice hissed. "You are us now," another crooned. "Eleanor feeds, so will you." "No," Daniel shouted. His throat burned. His breath came shallow, ragged. "I'm not one of you. I'll get out." A hand touched his shoulder. He spun in the void, eyes wide, but there was no light, no form, just the sensation, cold, thin fingers pressing into his flesh. More hands joined, crawling across his body, dragging him deeper into the unseen abyss. He struggled, thrashing, until his fingernails cracked against the brick. His mouth filled with dust, his lungs screamed for air. And then a light, faint, flickering from a crack between the bricks. Daniel forced himself toward it, his chest scraping raw, his nails splitting as he clawed at the mortar. His heart thundered. He could almost taste freedom. He pressed his eye to the crack and saw a face staring back, a young woman, pale, thin, her eyes wide with fear. She was holding a suitcase. "A new tenant." "No," Daniel croaked, slamming his fists against the wall. "Don't open it. Don't let me out." But the words that slipped through the crack weren't his plea. They came twisted, broken, in his voice but not his will. "Please, let me out," the girl gasped, stepping closer. Her hand reached for the wall. Daniel's screams were drowned by the chorus rising all around him. Another soul, another voice, another one for the wall, and deep in the void, Eleanor's laugh rang clear. The moving truck rattled away, leaving the narrow street swallowed in silence. Emily stood at the curb, suitcase in one hand, the key in the other. She looked up at the tall gray-bricked house. Its windows gaped like dead eyes. The paint peeled from its shutters. The air around it seemed heavier, colder. Her friends had begged her not to rent it. Too cheap, too old, too much history. But Emily was a writer, and she told herself the house would inspire her. Besides, she liked strange places. They had stories. The landlord hadn't stayed long, just shoved the key into her palm and warned her never to mess with the walls. She had laughed then, thinking it was a quirky old superstition. Now, standing alone, she wasn't so sure. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and old wood. Her footsteps echoed as she climbed the stairs to her room. The walls seemed to close, the hallway too narrow. That's when she heard it. 3 sharp knocks. Emily froze. The sound had come from inside the house, from the wall directly across her room. That she set her suitcase down slowly. "Hello." Silence. Her pulse quickened. Maybe pipes. Old houses creaked and groaned. She told herself that and started unpacking, stacking notebooks on the desk by the window. Knock, knock, knock. This time it was closer. Louder. Emily dropped the book she was holding. It hit the floor with a dull thud. Then a voice whispered through the wall, "Please, let me out." Emily's skin prickled. The voice was weak, raw, a man's voice, coursed with desperation. She pressed her ear against the wall, her breath shallow. "Who's there?" she whispered. "Trapped." The voice groaned. "She won't let me go." Emily's throat tightened. "Who?" Silence stretched on so long she almost pulled away until the voice returned, trembling. "Eleanor." The name clawed at her, though she didn't know why. Emily stumbled back, her legs shaking. She grabbed her phone and typed frantically, "Man's voice in my wall." The search results loaded with urban legends, ghost forums, and grainy pictures of houses that looked eerily familiar. Every story had the same warning: if you hear knocking in that house, never answer. Emily's phone flickered. The screen glittered. The word never warped into "let me out." Her scream lodged in her throat. The lights in her room flickered once, twice, then went black dot, and in the suffocating dark, the knocking returned slow. Deliberate knock, 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 followed by Daniel's voice. "Please, Emily, just one brick please," but layered beneath his plea, dozens of other voices whispered in unison, "Join us." Emily stood frozen in the darkness of room 6, the whispers pressing against her skull like a swarm of insects. The walls throbbed with sound, every brick vibrating as if something alive pulsed behind it. "Emily, just one brick." Daniel's voice begged again, weak, trembling. "She'll know if you refuse," another whisper hissed. "Eleanor doesn't forgive." Her phone flickered back to life, its glow casting her pale face in ghostly light. Across the cracked screen, words appeared she hadn't typed. "Choose." Emily's hands trembled. Every story she'd read warned her not to answer the knocks, but how could she ignore that voice? He sounded so broken, so human. Her breath came quick and shallow. She stared at the wall, at the faded plaster, at the spot where the knocking had started. She whispered, "If I open it, will you leave me alone?" Silence. Then Daniel's voice, softer. "I just want to go home." Her stomach knotted. What if it was true? What if he was just trapped, not dead? But how could a man be inside a wall? The voices shifted, some pleading, some mocking, some chanting Eleanor's name. The air grew heavy, cold seeped into her bones, and then, without her touching it, the old desk drawer slid open with a groan. Inside, half buried beneath dust, was a rusted chisel. Her fingers twitched. The house was giving her a tool. Emily staggered back. "No, no, this is a trick." The whispers rose to a furious pitch. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A notification flashed across the screen, though no message app was open. Midnight is almost over. Decide. She checked the clock on the wall. 11:58. 2 minutes. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She could grab the chisel, pry open a brick, set him free, or she could run. But run where? She was already inside Eleanor's house. The lights flickered on for a split second, revealing something scrolled in dripping red across the ceiling she swore hadn't been there before. "Don't listen." The room plunged back into darkness. Knock, 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 knock. Her body moved before her brain caught up. Emily grabbed the chisel. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped it. She pressed the cold metal to the wall, and the voice whispered again, closer this time, right against her ear. "Yes, just one brick. Emily, free me." The first brick loosened with a snap. Dust filled the air, and behind it something shifted, something wet, something that breathed. Emily's scream tore through the night as a pale hand shot through the crack, fingers clawing, nails scraping her arm. She realized too late. She hadn't freed Daniel. She had freed Eleanor. The story ends here, but the curse still waits. Should I continue with the next tenant's tale? Comment below if you want the next part.